morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us today for our Platform Analytics Academy. A couple quick things that we'll go over from a logistical standpoint and things of that nature, and then we'll get directly into our conversation and our topic that we have today. So always, this is for you. This is another great session of bringing ideas to you and some better understanding and practical guidance as it relates to platform analytics for you. It is going to be recorded. It will be out on our YouTube channel later on today or early tomorrow morning, as well as in the community event itself. Along with a new thing that I'm doing is putting the questions that are asked via type also into the community event. Quite often those kind of get lost. The ones that are recorded obviously are in the video, but I'm going to go ahead and put the questions that are typed there as well. So those will be there for you if you need those. So with that Q&A, please ask questions. Please use the Q&A if you can. We do have other panelists that are on the call that aren't necessarily delivering the content today, but they are here to answer questions as they can, and they may come off of mute as well as we sort of proceed through the content for today. So Safe Harbor, always just like to mention this. I don't know how much will be in this today, but it's always a good idea to mention this so you'll have that understanding as you go into what we're delivering for you today. And as usual, my name is Thomas Davis, and I'm a host and a panelist. And Tara and Dan, my co-workers, are actually going to present the content that we have going on today. And we also have Adam, Marta, Olga, and Rabajan, or RJ as we call him, on here as well. So as always, we have really good people here to answer questions, and we hope to be able to fulfill that for you today and have some really good conversation around platform analytics housekeeping solutions. So with that, Dan, Tara, whoever wants it, you may take it.
Hey, everyone. My name is Tara Fisher, and I am here to talk to you. Dan and I are here to talk to you about some housekeeping solutions. What I want to start this off with by saying, we know that there's quite a few people on the call today. We know that some of you are shy. We really want this to be an open discussion. What started off us wanting to talk with you about housekeeping solutions was obviously this migration that's been in the forefront of every conversation we've had with you lately. We are moving to a new experience within the platform. It's a newer and better way of doing things for sure, but it's a learning curve. And so one of the things we started talking about is, hey, prior to this migration, maybe we should give you guys some tips on how to clean up what's going on in your instance and, housekeeping stuff. But while we were talking about it, we realized that this is probably stuff you should be doing all the time, not just because we're migrating. So this will be an ongoing conversation that we have with you over the course of the next few years, making sure that you're staying top of this as we migrate to a new experience. We're going to talk with you about different ways of doing that and going about that as well. So let me go on really quick with the agenda. This is, we're going to cover pre-migration cleanup conversations, how to prune and get rid of some duplicates. Dan's going to cover some scan suggestions, talk about organization, and then open Q&A. But we want you to have open Q&A the entire time we're having this conversation. So we do have some breaks in here where we're going to ask you to come off mute, raise your hand, whatever it is that you're more comfortable with. But we definitely want this to be a group conversation because we can leverage your experience and share that with everybody, as well as some of the experiences we have. So one of the reasons why I am presenting to you today is because I used to be in your position. Here at ServiceNow, I was the performance analytics admin for our operations side of the house, and I have felt your pain, and I can only imagine what it's going to feel like moving forward. So why do housekeeping? This migration, and it's not just because of the migration, like I said, you should be keeping your house clean at all times. It's very important to make sure that we're not bogging down our instance with a bunch of stuff that really doesn't need to be there anymore. And so we're going to kind of give you some tips on how to check and see what's been forgotten, everything that's been long lost, because when we do this migration that we're talking about, we are going to look at everything and it's going to pull everything over. So this is a great opportunity if you haven't done housekeeping before to jump in and start that. It will also help you complete the migration in batches. So we're going to talk a little bit about organizing your environment and making sure that you are using the things that we've provided for you, indicator groups, dashboard groups, stuff like that. If you have an opportunity to leverage it and you haven't, this is an opportunity for you to take that so that you can group everything and be like, okay, these are the ones I want to look at next in this little group. And it'll alleviate some of the stress of having to learn new features and also having to trudge through unused and forgotten content. We want to make this as stress-free as possible. So we want to have an open discussion with all of y'all throughout this entire conversation, this entire presentation. So remember that this is an open discussion. I will look at my colleagues while I'm talking to tell me if someone raises their hand or if something comes in that is pressing and we all want to talk about it together. I'll look to you, everyone, my panelists, to tell me to stop talking, and I will be happy to do that as we move into the next couple of subjects. These are definitely things we want to discuss with you.
We got you and we're ready.
What was that?
I said, we got you and we're ready.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
I just want to just add on to what you're saying about the why we want to do this. I just want to really stress when it says the migration tool, the migration application, when it's available, it looks for everything, every report, every report, every widget, every indicator, every breakdown, everything, and it's like including every report, as I mentioned. So that's why you really want to be put some thought into it. It's got to be worth the effort to put some thought into helping you find the content that isn't being used. That being said, part of the reason we're having this discussion is because there isn't a one-size-fits-all perfect automated tool within the platform to say, here's all the stuff that you might not need. Instead, we really say we're providing some tips, but we also want to hear your ideas as well, because I know many of you are already doing this, but some of you are just at the very beginning of this journey of trying to keep yourself organized. So they just kind of wanted to reinforce that point.
Absolutely. All right, let's roll up our sleeves and talk about the first thing that we need to talk about. Only migrate what you need. Always look at, regardless of migration, always look at what's not being used. There are always opportunities and candidates for removal. And this is just going to help keep everything clean and simple. So what I'm about to share with you are the things that I did here at ServiceNow. I used a combination of reports, scheduled reports and stuff that I got sent to me that helped me kind of stay on track and kind of top of everything. As Dan said, we don't have a tool like that for you because it's unique to every situation. And so it would be hard for us to come up with something like that, but we can definitely tell you we've been in your shoes and here are some tips and tricks that we have. So the first thing that was important to me was managing my indicator sources. I wanted to make sure that my teams, my power users weren't replicating queries that were hitting the system that were exactly the same. So I just had a simple report that showed me what was being created that was new to review it and make sure that there weren't any replication of queries. And also, now before I gave anyone access to actually leverage performance analytics, they had to pass like a test. They had to go onto a subprod and develop a dashboard or widgets or queries or whatever it is that they needed to do to show that they knew how to do it and that they understood the structure of the data and how to write a proper query. However, things slip through the cracks. Sometimes things happen and we miss it. So this is also a great way to monitor whether or not you have any queries that are kind of taken off or doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Things that it kind of helps you just kind of monitor what's going on in your house so that you can interfere immediately and make sure that things get corrected if needed. Another thing that I like to look at was automated indicators with no job. So if they weren't on a job or if they didn't have a source. Now, this was several years ago. You could create an indicator indicator and you didn't have to associate a source with it. I don't know if I haven't done it in a while, so it's probably not something that you can do anymore, but you can definitely create indicators and then forget to put them on a job or create a different one or have several people creating them and just kind of miss that they didn't actually get picked up and used. And so this is a great report to look at what you have sitting around out there. And if there's stuff kind of floating, that's a good way to describe it, floating around out there with no purpose. And these are good things for you to look at and review. Maybe there's reasons, maybe they're creating them in succession to get ready for something that they're going to create, or maybe it's just something that got missed and overlooked. But these are always great things to look for and remove where applicable. And then formula indicators where the automated indicator is not in a job, right? So obviously all formula indicators are created using different automated indicators to come up with your math equation there. And so we want to look at that as well, make sure that we don't have anything floating. Obviously, inactive dashboards. I will tell you there are some good use cases for inactive dashboards. We used to have everyone who was a developer of a dashboard had one inactive dashboard that they used. Once they did all their work in their subprod, they would use like as a staging dashboard. So there are some use cases to have an inactive dashboard, or maybe I'm building it right now. It's not going to be ready for actual consumption because I've got a bunch of widgets and stuff I need to place, and I've got, visualize, like design things that I need to work out. I want to put, content block here or there or whatever. So if that's the case, there's always good use cases, but there's also a lot of stuff that just gets created, forgotten about, overlooked. So this is a great one to look at as well, as how many dashboards do I have out there where active is false? And is there a reason for these? Should I have this many? You'd be surprised. Well, maybe not, but I was surprised how frequently that grew, because I thought, oh, there's only so many inactive dashboards that I've got, control over. I didn't realize how many other ones would pop up.
Hey, Tara, as you're talking about dashboards, we did have a question come in, and we may need some context. I think I may understand it, but
I think
it says if dashboard is not being used, how to check how many users are using dashboard. So if I'm understanding this, maybe if a dashboard is not being used, meaning somebody doesn't want somebody using it, but users are still using it.
I think it's how can you tell? I think how can you tell other than marking it inactive? I believe we're saying is how can you tell? And Agata, you can come off mute if you'd like to clarify that for us. But I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah, and I would look to Olga or Marta to answer the question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, so that's exactly my question. So, for example, I'm maintaining a couple of dashboards, and I'm simply curious if it's being utilized, because as far as I know, I can check how many times reports is being used, but it can be published on multiple dashboards. So currently, I don't know on which dashboard it is. For example, if report is being used, where?
You can, so you would see it in report view if it, that's from a homepage. Where I look for dashboards is in Sys UI Navigator history, I believe is the table. We have a blog on it that we'll have to track down. But if you really have a question, there's a blog on how you can query Sys UI Navigator history to get the number of view counts in there. You need to be admin to see it. To see it's in there, but particularly if we're doing this, if I'm going through the migration, I'm probably going to get a clone, get admin on that clone, and I can query that and you can summarize it. The blog we have talks about running a job to go through it because it can be a pretty big history, but it would give you at least recent history of people who are accessing the dashboards. It's not a click away, but it's there.
From Vancouver, we have also added, as you mentioned, there are the report statistics and the PA widgets statistics. From Vancouver, we have also added the dashboard statistics. So you can see how many executions at the dashboards and from which users you had they have viewed that the dashboards.
So then to have this information without admin, I will have to wait until upgrade. But that's That's improvement. So
Yeah, because
thank
there
you for
isn't a
answering
perfect.
that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because there isn't a perfect tool today to do it pre Vancouver. So Adam's discussion about looking at basically it's looking at the history of each of the individual users, and you can pull out the dashboards. You can run a report or a more likely create an indicator based on it that will.
It requires a script. Just to be upfront about that one, the old way
Yeah.
requires a script to parse it out, but there's a blog that'll show you how to do it.
It's not. It's not simple, but it's not as Adam says, it's not a one click, but it's not something but it's something that is absolutely doable, and the effort is worth it.
Can we post that blog in our chat, please? Someone?
Yeah.
We'll get it there just before we're done.
So that's really
Okay,
good.
thank you.
So thank you, Agata.
Okay.
I got that.
Anything else, Thomas? Okay. So moving
I was
on.
muted. Sorry. No, we're good.
No, that's okay. So moving on, orphaned widgets, right? So what that means is someone went in and was like, oh, I'm going to put this indicator on a widget. Well, as you know, you can't see the widget unless it's on a dashboard or some sort of canvas for you to view. So they become orphaned. And I know I'm guilty of that because I'd be like, oh, I'm going to create this one, get sidetracked, walk away, and then be like, oh, I changed my mind. I want it to be a bar chart instead of whatever else I was working on. And so I know I have done that in the past. And so any widgets that are not on a dashboard are considered unused, and therefore those are great candidates for removal. Let's talk about reports on system tables. We do heavily frown upon that. Now we understand that there's always circumstances where you will have to do that, but in most cases, you want to be keeping a close eye on that. You don't want anything that's going to cause a major performance issue. And when we report on system tables, that can be the case. So you definitely want to have some sort of report in your queue that allows you to monitor whether or not these are actually being created and something for you to definitely consider before migration as a candidate for removal if it's not absolutely critical.
And
then,
I'm going to add, I'll add to the system reports. There's a few tables, subscription management. Some of the tables start with sys, and they allow reporting on it. So ATS stuff, if I want to report on that, it often starts with sys. And there's another one that I'm thinking, some of the Gen AI stuff starts in sys. They're not all bad. We want to be really cognizant of reporting on sys email, sys audit, stuff that can be massive. So they're not all bad, but you need to know what they are. That's the big thing here. And I think it's true with a lot of these things. They're not all bad, but you want to be aware. And so we want to make sure we show that awareness.
I'm going to throw a link in there too about there's a docs article that actually mentions the specific system tables that are very bad, and we'll add this to one of the things we're going to talk about at the end is where we're going to be gathering resources for all of this. So we'll make sure it's in there too. But I'm going to put it in the chat here right now.
Awesome, thank you. Reports that have not been shared with any roles. We call these single-use reports. They can become overwhelming and daunting. Not that you want to prevent folks from creating reports to do troubleshooting or whatever it is that they need them for, but generally if they're not on a dashboard, they're not on a schedule, they can fall victim to becoming single-use black hole reports, right? So it's something to keep an eye on. A good way to do that is just write a report and look at that and see how many reports haven't been shared. Generally, that means it's not on a dashboard. It's not being shared with anyone else, and keep an eye on that. Look at it if it's growing. If there's folks that you can reach out to, you can combine that with reports. The next one, reports not run for 3 months. Obviously, if they're not looking at it for 3 months and it's not on a quarterly scheduled cadence, it's a candidate for removal. So these are just great ways to look at combinations of different things. Maybe 3 months is too long. Maybe you don't want stuff that's been sitting around for a month. I mean, these are all things that are in your control. And there are all different ways for you to really kind of stay on top of the little things that slip through the cracks. These are some of the tips that we had. Does anyone have something on here that I haven't mentioned as a candidate for removal? We would love to hear from you.
What are your ideas, not just ours?
I know there's a few of you folks on here that have been using our stuff for a long time. So anything that we overlooked maybe, or something that you figured out that would be a great tip to share with everybody else?
We might have to be that old teacher that just calls on. No, we wouldn't do that.
Philip
Oh, there
Tishberg.
we go.
Can you take him off mute?
Yep, he's ready.
Let's hear it, Philip.
Hey, how's it going, guys? One thing I noticed that seems to get clogged up a lot in a lot of organizations either don't have the connectivity or don't monitor it. Sys user table. Lots of users that are no longer in the organization, or
Oh, yes.
right?
Mhm.
Yes.
And that tends, if you can get away, either get a latest update from either Workday or take your LDAP and filter it, and you can figure out who's active, who's not active. That tends to be a table that fills up a lot.
You are absolutely correct in that. I'm going to add that report stat to this before we share it out, because we definitely want to be looking at any reports that have been created by somebody who's inactive, no longer here at the company, whatever. Those are things that we actually had talked about a while ago, and I think it just fell off of our radar. So that is great. Thank you.
But be careful. That's an information point. If the report's not
Right.
owned by somebody, but it could be. What you need to do is get it assigned to a new owner,
No,
right?
absolutely.
So it doesn't mean I'm just saying. I'm not speaking from personal experience, but if I were, make sure you don't just delete things that are run, because some of those things have been run,
No,
a
that
1,000
wouldn't be
times a day.
personal.
But it's a great piece of information to go. Hey, if this is run 100 times a day, maybe we should have an owner who still works here.
Yeah, well, we had talked about Adam too, like if they change teams and they're, looking at kind of like who's created what within this, we were trying to figure that out, right? Who has these roles, and is this created by somebody that's not in this role anymore, and should it be moved? And so there's a bunch of different ways to kind of dig into the details, but definitely at least staying on top of having active users owning your data out there is critical, right? You can, and like we talked about, combining it. If you combine it with, inactive user hasn't been run in 3 months or hasn't been run in 2 months, or whatever your thing is, those are good ways of, combining your queries to make sure that you hone in on where you need to have a conversation before you just delete stuff. And
Thank
Jen,
you, Phil. Yep. I'll unmute her. Yep. Go ahead, Jen. You should be able to talk.
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So this one's kind of a specific use case, but it's something we ran into while we were trying to do cleanup last year. Is we have so many indicators, automated indicators. They're still on jobs, which is the really not good things, because they're impacting our performance, because we're running on jobs for things that are really not being used anymore. So we're trying to clean it up. Whatever indicators are not attached to widgets, not attached to dashboards and things like that. But we were able to kind of find connections to be able to do that. But where we kind of reached a blocker is we realized some automated indicators look like they weren't, attached to any widgets or dashboards, but that's because they're attached to formula indicators, which are then on widgets and dashboards. So we kind of had to stop retiring things so that we weren't impacting that.
I've thought, and this is when I don't know how to say this. If an indicator is not on a job, then it shouldn't be. I thought if it was in a formula, it would show up as part of that job. No,
They are on jobs, so that's our issue.
Oh.
We have things that are running on jobs that are really not being used on widgets, or
but that's because the formula indicator is the one that's on the widget.
Yeah.
Right. So you definitely have to be careful with that. This way we started with just automated indicators that aren't on a job, for sure.
So the data that's there, if you go to a formula indicator today, this wasn't there. This was added a few releases ago, but it wasn't there in the beginning. But if you go into a formula, you can see the contributing indicators, which I actually don't recall if it goes through all the levels or not. But there, if you look at how we do that related list, you can see how to process that. But you can look for that. The data is all in there, and it's with a formula. It can be recursive. There's no limit to the recursion or limit to the levels. But it is absolutely a gotcha that you have to look for about those indicators. But if you have the list of indicators, you can then run that through the contributing indicators to make sure they're not contributing somewhere. So you can go through to go, it's not in a widget and it's not contributing. Now it's one we can get rid of.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's helpful. Because before we couldn't really see that relationship other than the dependency free functionality, but that one kind of just goes like indicator by indicator, which is not great.
Yeah, you definitely want ones that are not contributing and not in a widget.
Okay.
But in a job, right?
Yeah.
And Kara, we did have some ideas that came in, so I just kind of read those off real quick. So
Yeah, let's hear it.
One, there is a PA diagnostics job you can run that can catch indicators in formula. So that's another way of knowing that. Let's see, reports owned by inactive user. We kind of talked about that a little bit, and using launch dependency usage, but would be helpful to have a report. So that is available as well. And then let's see, reports with old inactive report sources. That's a really, really good one. And that's really comes down report sources for me from a management perspective. Like, are you using report sources? Have they been updated? Are you looking at them? Is the data in them stale and things like that? So that's another great one. Let me see. That may be it. A lot of the other comments, I think that they're talking about maybe another comment, but Drew had one that says, would be nice to see indicators that are pulling the same indicator source and same additional conditions. So are there duplicates out there, right? Why are there duplicates, things of that nature? Yeah.
So that's what the first what we'll do is we'll look at some of the queries that we have put together, but like the indicator source management bullet here is a way to report on what's been created to see whether or not there were duplicates. It is hard to do it though. I will be honest with you. If someone created something new and it was one of the prior one was created, a year ago, then that becomes a little bit clunky. I was trying to do something that could kind of give me visibility onto the new stuff that was being created, assuming that I knew everything that was out there already, but I can understand that could be a little bit of a challenge if you aren't aware of everything that's out there or something that's legacy. And so, yeah, we would have to think a little bit more about that. But that first one was kind of trying to hit that, trying to keep control of what new things are being created, simple things like, stuff from the incident table that was created, on today, like whatever, like those are easy ones to catch, but some of the more maybe specific ones would be harder. I agree with you. Anyone have any ideas on how to address that? Oh, when I say anyone, I mean Adam Stout, just so you know.
Sorry, I was creating a short link. I was finding the dashboard usage one. I'd write a script for that.
Okay. So, and that's where me and Adam go for directions. So yeah, unfortunately, there are situations where you will have to write a script to kind of stay on top of this stuff consistently.
And I want to throw out here too. We talked about the dashboard usage, which I'll put the link in just a sec. The script in here. A lot of what we see, the advantages once we migrate to the platform analytics experience, is that we've built in a lot more reporting, a lot more telemetry, a lot more everything to help manage all these things. Management is now is not an afterthought. It's something we think about as everything that rolls out. So we do need to get over these hurdles, and we're talking about this through migration. But life is better for us in 24 and in 25 and going forward. A lot of these things where we're just going to prevent you from being able to do it, right? Or give you visibility into it, but not have all of these pieces out there that may or may not be causing us issues. So a lot more visibility and unified you'll see in some issues that we have today where it's different for widgets than it is for reports. It's different for homepages than it is for dashboards. As we bring all of these things together, it just makes life will be much easier once we get into the new world.
Right. And we will have new ideas for you on how to make sure you stay on top of this, further down the road.
Getting lots of additional, yeah, we're also getting lots of additional good ideas in various chats here too. So,
let's make sure we capture all that so we can add it to the deck before we start.
Right.
We just had a couple highlighted, kind of reiterating on tips for finding duplicates. There are ways to look at breakdown source conditions and review them using a report to help, make sure you're looking at your breakdown sources. Same thing we just talked about with indicator source management. If you're looking at it frequently, you can kind of catch things that are new and being created, but you may need a script to get stuff that might match something that was created, 6 months to a year ago. And then obviously reports with the same table and conditions. These are kind of some of the things that stand out to us on how to try to catch duplicates. But if anyone has any additional ideas that we missed on catching duplicates, we'd love to hear from you.
I would just even think about something I'm just thinking about here now too, is looking at it from the opposite perspective. What are reports that are named the same but don't have the same conditions? Don't have the same table or condition. Those might be good to clean up as well.
And are the same type, right? So I use the same report name, but one's a pivot and one's a list. That's fine. But if I have the same pivot chart with the same name on the same conditions on the same table, and I have 6 of them, that's a great thing to look at. And it does come back to, these are things to review. Right. So, and it's especially as we start mashing these things together, then we can find things that are pretty safe to archive, delete, whatever we want to use, deactivate, group them into, put them in a penalty box.
Exactly. Our recommendation is to inactivate, wait and hear if you hear any complaints, give yourself a time period at whatever your patience level is, right? And then delete. So and that's something that we actually did here at ServiceNow. I was like, well, just inactivate it and see who complains, right? Because some stuff does get forgotten, and so
we do that, like dashboards. We would remove all the sharing, and remove all the sharing. Maybe change the owner to a sysadmin or something, where we basically take it away, but it's something that was very easy to undo.
Yes.
And as Tara mentioned before, it's things like report inactive users. Information, inactive users who own reports that haven't been run in 6 months, just go ahead and anything that hits that, let's just archive, right? Archive, delete, whatever you want to do. You can export all the sysxml stuff if you want, but there are things that if it's on, 3 of my naughty lists, I might just go ahead and take care of it.
Exactly.
I just want to add, I had a couple of the questions I think I can knock out here fairly quickly because they're based upon things we've just been talking about.
Okay.
So one of them was are reports on the sys user table a concern? And I think we just talked about that really sys user is generally not a concern, or a report that's directly on that table. But it's, there isn't, it depends if you've got 200,000 users. Even that's not a terrible issue, but you probably want to make sure that your report conditions are on, like, use indexed fields and things of that sort. We have a whole other session just talking about report tuning that can help with that as well. Another question was about the guidance on system tables for indicators. So instead of running reports against the table directly, the idea is, does it apply to, I'm going to say, indicator sources? Is it okay if it's not okay to do for some system tables, it's not all right to do reports against them? What about indicator sources? Generally, the same would apply. I would avoid wanting to run them on some of the particularly naughty system tables that are in the docs article that I referenced, but in general, Leo, I think it's a good idea to stay away from using system tables in your indicator sources. but assuming they're on the list of the
Oh, okay.
6 or
That's
7
Yeah,
naughty ones.
and the system tables, just as we talk about that, there is out of the box, there's a property that says don't allow, that blocks everything that starts with sys underscore. Then there's an allow list. There's a property with an allow list. If it's on the allow list, it's on the allow list, it's fine. Sys users on that, it's fine. You're going to have to do it. Sys audit is not on that. Sys email is not on that. But I find myself adding lots of tables to that because I want to report operationally on, I want to write my own reports or indicators on ATF, on subscription management, on flows, on AI usage. And you're going to have tables on there. It's okay. It's okay. The blocking all sys tables, there's a lot that are sys tables now where it's very legitimate to report on there. So be aware, but don't be afraid. And understand if you're reporting on sys audit, performance is not going to be good, right? And that's why it is blocked. But don't be afraid if you need it and it's working well. It's fine. You don't need to ask my permission, but just be very aware of those things. You can also report, if you report on task, you can also get bad performance if you don't use any index fields and you have 20 million active tasks. It can be bad there too. But we're just trying to make sure we're pointing in the right direction and we're aware of what we're doing and we're doing it the most effective way.
all right.
Sorry,
Anything else?
soapbox stepping down from.
No. That we always welcome you in your soapbox.
And more great ideas in the chats here too. So again, we're going to be capturing all of those and including those in the summaries. So things
we
like
really appreciate that.
things like breakdowns with no tables mapped. Yeah. That we didn't even think about that one.
Yeah.
But there's stuff that we didn't even think about that you guys have already thought about. That's why we're crowdsourcing. We're definitely looking to this is, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes too, about how we want to I won't say formally crowdsource, but have a little bit more organized crowdsourcing that we're going to try to work through with this. So good.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to quickly talk about
organization.
So these are some things that kind of came from rolling up our sleeves and being part of your side of the fence. Definitely not things that you have to adhere to. These are just recommendations that we found made things easier for us on this side. Naming conventions. I was specifically a big stickler on naming conventions as well as using grouping. It's kind of the combination of the two helped me keep an eye on what was going out there. When we first started using performance analytics and platform many moons ago, I was the only performance analytics admin at the time. Obviously, that increased as we continued to grow, as we recommend for you as well. But at the time, on my side of the house, I was the only one. And so it was really important that I kind of had as much control or perceived control as I could possibly get. And so I did stress naming conventions. I wanted every single indicator that was created to start with a prefix, whether, and kind of like in the same concept of grouping, right? If it was incident related, if we were reporting on case, if it was for CSAT specifically, there's certain things that just kind of had natural groupings in my head in the way that we did and managed our business. We had a lot of operational reporting. So stuff that we did per specific products. Each development team had their own dashboard. And so I insisted that we prefixed every single indicator so that I could see immediately how many indicators do I have created for incident. And, if everything has the same prefix, I could see also what conditions were being applied and whether or not a group was associated to it. So I could have that double kind of squished in view of my world for that specific category. And I could definitely felt more organized, but also could see where there were some maybe replication things happening or teams maybe being a little bit confused on how things might need to go. And so it was a really great way to help me feel like I had as much control as possible. I know that's not actually a thing that we ever actually attain as a performance analytics admin, but it feels good to feel like you're almost there. Same thing with, like I mentioned, grouping. There's dashboard grouping, there's indicator groups, all things that are provided within the platform that kind of help you maintain that semblance of control. Is there something, those are things that work for me. I'd love to hear anything that worked for someone else that didn't fall under this kind of umbrella.
I just had one other thought on it that
Go for it.
is kind of borrowing, stealing, updating from, and we'll have the link for this as well. But there was a knowledge conference presentation on kind of keeping your environment clean. So one of the ideas that was by a customer, by the way, there was a customer who was going through it. And so it has some great tips and tricks in there. Some of these are the same things that they were doing, but one of the things in regards to naming conventions, I thought was kind of neat. Instead of just maybe removing reports that haven't been run in 3 months, might do something like take the reports that haven't been run in 3 months and add the word archive to the end of the name of the title of the report. So then you can run everything that ends in archive. Now, if it hasn't been run, now it's for 6 months. When you get to that point, you say, okay, these I feel very safe in actually removing that sort of thing. So that's also
a really, really great tip and great way.
That's what I say. I can't take it myself. It was.
Yeah. It's a great way to use naming conventions though, too, right? To kind of give you that extra filter reporting capability. I do want to touch on one thing really quick. And it's because we have enough great people on this conversation to talk about the difference between a published and a shared report, and just making sure, and thank you, Stephen, of course, I'm bowing down right now thank you for pointing that out, because we definitely want you to have visibility onto how many reports are actually being published versus being shared, and understanding the difference between that. And that could be another great report to keep in your arsenal of checking on things, is how many reports do I have out there that are being published, and what's the use case for this specifically? Does the end user understand the difference between the two? And those are things you just kind of want to, stay on top of, so you know what's going on.
I have a rule of thumb for this.
Oh, let's hear it.
Never publish anything.
Okay. Well, I was trying not to say that because I don't want to be bossy, but okay.
But to be clear, publishing means you can see this data without logging in, right? And reports. Now, the report view ACL is actually going to block a lot of these things. The use case for publishing was to have a wall-mounted display, and on a portal. If I'm logging into a portal, I'm not logging in. I'm at a portal, and I want to see a report of the number of incidents in the queue, right? Or the average wait time or something like that. It's probably a better way to do it. Maybe you would have to publish that report so public can see it. But the number of use cases I've seen where it should be published versus the number where it shouldn't have been, it rounds to never. So be very conscious, but it means I can see it, and particularly something like a pivot report, you would see the data. And what you need to be really, really, really focused in on are the ACLs tightened so that they can't click on it and then see the data. And what I've seen happen is that they when somebody published it, something didn't work, and then they went in and added an ACL to share all my incident data, or just a little bit too much than that there should be. So it's rare that there's a valid use case to publish, because publish means not logged in at all, not shared with everybody. Share it with SNC internal, share it with everybody. I don't care, but don't publish it. Somebody can tell me where it's in there, and I know there are some valid use cases, but super few and far between. And so you definitely, as a report, as an admin, you should know every one of those that's on there, because you don't want to get the call about why is this data exposed, right? And particularly if somebody added some ACLs. And the wall-mounted stuff, what am I going to say? What am I going to say about the wall-mounted thing? Tara, Thomas, what's my favorite sentence? I got a blog about it. I will find it. I will get that up there about the wall-mounted stuff. I do a service account. Is what I do. A service account, one that doesn't time out necessarily, that needs the password stuff. I'll put that in here. But public means not logged in, logged in. And what data? What are you going to tell just anybody? So there you go. That's my rule. Don't do it.
Thank you for that. I agree with you very much. I just I was trying to be nice and say, hey, really
Don't
pay
do it.
attention to this stuff. Okay.
You let me be the bad guy all the time.
I love it.
appreciate
Always,
Okay.
always. I will always let you fall on that sword. All right. And I think with that, I am going to hand off to Mr. Kane.
Yeah, and actually, I think in this, for the sake of time, I think it's more important for us to talk about how we're planning to gather all these resources, because just everyone shared a bunch of great ideas here. We're sharing some ideas. If you're feeling overwhelmed about oh my gosh, how am I going to remember all of this? We have a plan. So, and then I think I might want to talk about the instant scan stuff at the very end if we have time. For those who are not familiar with instant scan, I would like to briefly introduce it to you. But that's not. I think that's less important than our resources. So I think that moves over to Thomas then. If I am.
Oh,
Sorry, I was answering questions. Sorry.
no
Yeah.
worries. We
Yeah,
will jump on that for you.
Does that work for you, Thomas? We're kind of having an
Yeah.
on-air
No, I can
production
show it.
meeting.
I can show it. Yep.
To just talk about this while you're getting prepped, Thomas. Drew, you mentioned tags. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Thomas. Get your stuff ready. You mentioned tags. Tags are definitely a great usage for helping categorize and grouping. They're kind of wonky with reporting on them. So that's why we kind of mentioned a couple other ways and kind of stayed away from that, but definitely leverage those if it works for you.
Yeah. So as Dan was saying, and a lot of great conversation, a lot of questions and good comments and ideas and all that stuff. And we're grabbing all of that stuff directly from the chat and the Q&A and keeping account of that, because what we want to do, our plan, as you can see down there at the bottom, we have created a blog at this point, and it's empty because we wanted to wait for this call to happen so we could get great things from you all as customers, the ideas of what you're doing every day within your instance to make things like this possible. So what we'll do is we're gonna put a lot of this stuff directly into that community blog, and also, like I said earlier, the questions that we had from this and the answers will obviously be in the recording, but they'll also be the typed ones, because there was a lot of questions that are being answered via type. We'll make sure that we put those on the community event as well. And then these Academy links, are some of the ones that we've done here lately. The bottom two, I think, directly really correlate with what we're trying to do in this particular one, the tuning solutions and performance analytics and the tuning solutions for reporting. And those are two really good sessions. If you were not on them or if you have forgotten about them, it'd be a really good idea to revisit those just to kind of help out your instance anyway. But it does sort of correlate with this a little bit as well. So, because if you're able to figure out some tuning solutions and fix those, then obviously that always helps with migration as well. But a lot of the conversations that we have had the past few months have been around moving to next experience and what's coming in the future and things of that. So that's really why we wanted to make sure that we put a session together today to talk about that. And honestly, truth be known, I think we could probably have a part 2 to this. We'll have to figure that out, because I think that there's a lot of questions that continue to come in, and we want to make sure that we get those answered. And then also, if people like coming off mute and want to talk and express ideas that they have, I think it's good as well. So maybe we'll look at doing a part 2 here in the future. We'll definitely get on the list of things. But we asked attendees today, ask your user base, right? So ask your customers, or the people that you're working with in your organization, of different things that you need to be done. And then, the one that's always the greatest to me is ask community. So a lot of the people that are on this call today I hope all of you are within the community, and not only asking questions, but sharing answers. And, any one of these scenarios, there could definitely be a question in the community that has talked about this and given ideas, like Adam referenced in the blog that he created some time ago, to be able to use that for whatever you're doing. So, there's a lot of additional resources that are out there. And again, the big thing is what we're showing here. But I'll make sure all of these, obviously you can't click on these links because it'll be saved as a PDF, but I'll make sure the links to all of these are in the community event and that community blog. That will be one that is actually going to grow over time. So yeah. Anything else with that, Dan?
No, but there was one other item I wanted to just very briefly, because we have a few questions left here too. But Marta, I don't know if I'm going to put you on the spot here for a moment, but could you talk, because there is some tools coming post migration, at the time with Washington, or that actually you can talk better about that, not with Washington, but actually the store app later.
Yeah.
Can you just talk very briefly about what's coming?
So these were all great information and feedback. What we are thinking about is to have some configuration settings in the migration center that will allow you to specify when you are doing your migration, your full bulk move of your content, if you want to not include some of the content. And that could be maybe dashboards and reports that have not been viewed, or could be, as you have mentioned, even like dashboards and reports that are not shared at all, and that the only users that have access are actually now like inactive or locked out. So we are trying to gather which are the best kind of filtering options for the migration, to move when you're moving all your content, to actually have a more clean up version once you have moved to platform analytics experience.
So the idea is we will be providing you with some stats that you don't have today. That's one other big part of that, but that's coming, what, first half of next year?
I will say more towards second half, but we are working to make it as soon as possible.
Go back to the old safe harbor disclaimer.
Yeah.
All right. So
Sarah, did you have one that you wanted to answer live about tags?
I was talking. I'm sorry, I was on mute. I answered it before I marked it answer live.
Oh, okay.
Saying yes, tags are always useful. Sometimes they can be a challenge to report on, but if they work for you, I think that's great. I didn't call that out, but that's a great, in addition to what we've already suggested. Awesome.
And
for sure.
Tags, the reporting issue with tags is one, visibility. So make sure you have those the tags shared with the right group, whether it's your dashboard admins or it's everybody. Make sure you can't dot walk to reporting, which is a challenge sometimes. But if I'm tagging dashboards, I'm tagging reports, that's okay. It's actually totally fine. So in what we're talking about, I actually really like tags. But just be cautious. In other cases, it's because of the dot walking thing. It's more of a challenge. You can't do some things, but I think here, like reviewed, archive tags can be incredibly useful for what we're doing. I hate naming conventions. If I have to use a naming convention, it's because I failed as a designer, right? That being said, Tara was absolutely right on requiring everybody to do it. I like to add new fields with choice lists. Tags work, but I like to add new fields to do it. But lots of good stuff there. There was one question, a comment that came in that I want to chime in on about the system reports. So I'm actually a fan. I'm going to open up system reports to everybody. I actually want to get rid of the property that blocks it. And I want to use the report on ACL. So we've done a session on the ACL assessments. And if those of you have been around, went through this exercise or going to report, the property blocks even admins from reporting, and it blocks everybody or nobody. The report on ACL, and somebody can correct me if I have that wrong, but the report on ACL will say, hey, report admins can report on it. Or I can create a new group, which is allowed to report on system tables, and not just system tables, can report on Integration Hub or a Flow Designer, can report on subscription management, can report on ATF. I can create those different groups and have ACLs that give those groups a report on. So the property predates everything. I mean, that is a very, very, very old property about no system tables, except for some that are allowed, and some that are allowed, that the default is don't allow things. But report on, and those ACLs give you the control that you actually want and need. Whether you know you want it or not, you definitely need it, and it allows you to give reporting access to the right people. Sorry, I saw another thing about the report ACLs that came in.
It's always good.
So there are a couple more. So the one from Shishir, if I'm saying that correctly, What do we do when people have created same set of reports multiple times, just filter by service desk agent? So if I'm understanding this correctly, so it's the same report and they have the filter for assigned to as one specific person, and they've just replicated that report over and over. Obviously, I don't think that that's a great idea unless it's necessary. I think that you could definitely put on a filter to that or some sort of breakdown if you had an NPA. But I think that's probably a bigger sort of management question of why are the individual reports needed of that nature. But I don't personally think it's a great idea when you could utilize interactive filters or things of that sort, especially if it's the same type of report. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything to that.
I do. Hey, what did I mention that? I got an opinion on this. So one of the things I do, we put a link to a blog about report use. So I really like report use, looking at report use and which reports and which dashboards are used a lot, and start looking at the tables they're on. Because what I'll start doing is going, hey, we actually have 50 minor variants or even 50 identical reports, and they're all coming from the operations team. They're all coming from marketing. They're all coming from finance. They're all coming from Amsterdam. And go, how about we build you a dashboard? And then, as what Thomas said, to go, and we'll add a couple of interactive filters. We'll add actually, a lot of what I see is not the interactive filters. It's personalization. It's my view of this. So I'm going to start looking at all the spread and go, hey, actually, we can consolidate and we can build a better one. I don't want my let's take my frontline managers, my first line managers. I don't want them building reports. I'm going to let them. I don't want them building it. I want them spending their time managing. So if I can create a power user group or a product advisory and go, hey, we're going to create a dashboard that works for all of the frontline managers with some interactive filters, with the best visualizations, that's going to be better. If I see lots of variations of the same thing, I have a process problem or an organization problem, which I want to solve by bringing things together. And all of that, there's lots of stuff we have to do now. Don't waste your time. Get on the workspaces. And if we get a workspace and I have my frontline workspace, I have my analytics together, I can let them take action. I start integrating that with Sidebar. I have all my AI powered stuff. You're going to get an awesome end user experience. Reports are not, our job is not to look at a report, it's to get something done. So we want to hook in, why am I looking at this data? What am I trying to get done? And get with that team that has to do that and get that into a workspace. Just to let you know, I'm using my hands right now and I'm really selling it with the hand gestures to bringing this together. And I apologize, you can't see it. I have to get like some AI to do that. But imagine it's great. But again, let's focus on the workspace and getting the analytics in the workspace where they're getting work done. We're going to be much better off. We're going to have a better end user experience. They're going to be more productive. They're going to be happier and not spending time duplicating dashboards and tweaking.
Okay, great. Thank you, Adam. And we are at the top of the hour. If we did not get to your question, please ask that in the community and feel free to tag any one of us. But also in 2 weeks, if your question can wait for 2 weeks, we are having our last Ask the Expert session of the year, where almost all of the people that are on this call now will be right back on this call again, and then some additional ones to actually open it up again to any questions that you may have, not necessarily around what we talked about today, but anything as it relates to platform analytics. So again, if your question didn't get answered, or if you think of more, definitely put them in the community if you want to do that and tag any one of us. If not, we can see you back in 2 weeks where we'll open up the floor and let you ask as many more questions as you would like. Thank you to all of the presenters and panelists, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Thank you.